Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Front Page on Bold. This is me, Moizur Rahman, signing in, and today we will be bringing you news from all across the world. Without wasting any time, let's talk about the entire world's Achilles heel, which is climate change. And when we talk about Pakistan's context, so this is Pakistan's urgent battle against an unequal global threat. And the reason why we are discussing climate change is this is one crisis that's not waiting for war, politics or headlines. Climate change, a silent killer that's hitting Pakistan hard, even though we barely contributed to this menace that we face today. Let's put this into perspective. Pakistan contributes less than 1% to the global emissions, yet we are ranked amongst the top 10 countries most affected by climate change, according to German Watch and other independent assessments. The numbers are alarming. Pakistan has the most glaciers outside polar regions and they're melting faster than ever. That means massive flood risks, and we've already seen the destruction this can cause from Sindh to Swat. The 2022 floods were a disaster. If we don't act, they'll just be the beginning. And it's not just Pakistan. From floods in Texas that killed over 120 people and have left 150 missing to severe droughts in Africa and China. Climate extremes are now the new normal. When you talk about NASA's GRACE satellite, its data shows that these events have doubled in intensity and frequency in just the last 5 years. Even scientists are shocked. The Climate Risk Index 2025 confirms what we know deep down. The global south is suffering the most, not because we polluted the planet, but because we lack the resources to adapt. With global temperatures projected to continue rising over the next 5 years, climate impacts will intensify, affecting livelihoods, economies, and development. For Pakistan, this means a pressing need to act swiftly and strategically. Pakistan is unprepared but not helpless. The government has a national adaptation plan that lays out a clear roadmap for a climate resilient future. But plans mean nothing without implementation. There is an urgent need for investment in agriculture, energy, and urban infrastructure, which must include marginalized communities in the solution. Overcoming this growing challenge demands serious funding, political will, and coordinated execution in both federal and provincial levels. The climate emergency is real. It is global, and for Pakistan, it is personal. The country's survival hinges on treating climate action as an existential threat and a national security imperative. It's time to move beyond rhetoric because climate change won't wait. So this issue of climate change has started the entire world's Achilles heel. And when we talk about global south, you've seen how the temperatures have risen in Pakistan, India, and the rest of South Asia. And when we talk about Europe, where historically there was never, summers were never seen reaching these levels, whether you talk about the United Kingdom, you talk about Ireland, you talk about the entire region, the entire Balkan region, temperatures went up to 45 degrees in the Balkan region, including Spain and Italy. And when we talk about the United Kingdom, where even the maximum temperatures in summers used to go at around about 25 degrees. There have been days where temperatures have been clocked around 38 degrees. So this shows that the world is on a very, very dangerous slippery slope. And if the world doesn't act together in terms of a coordinated effort, we will be losing this war against climate change like no war ever. So we will continue to discuss this topic in further detail. But now let's talk about Israel's plan to actually exterminate Gaza's population. The Israeli defense minister plans to move Gaza's population to a camp in Rafah. Let's move. This is a very, very troubling development in Gaza. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, has announced a shocking plan to forcibly move up to 600,000 Palestinians into what he calls a humanitarian area on the ruins of Rafah in southern Gaza. The so-called humanitarian city is nothing less than a sealed-off prison camp. This is no less than an open-air prison. Palestinians would be subjected to strict security checks, and once inside, they would be completely contained by the Israeli military with no freedom to leave. The plan is to eventually force Gaza's entire population, over 2.1 million people, into this camp. Let's be clear, this plan is illegal and inhumane. Forcibly displacing an entire civilian population within an occupied territory violates international humanitarian law. The United Nations, the international community of the Red Cross, and human rights experts have condemned such forced transfers. Israel claims that this is for Palestinians' protection, but no military justification can excuse uprooting millions indefinitely. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis has deepened. Israel Katz says that the international groups will manage aid inside the camp, yet Israel has long blocked aid from reaching Gaza's suffering population. Aid agencies now face a moral dilemma: help under harsh Israeli control or stand aside as civilians endure immense hardship. Adding to this grim picture, the United States has imposed sanctions on Francesca Albanese, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the humanitarian rights and the violation, who has been an advocate of the rights of the people of Palestine, who has been reporting what has happened in the Palestinian territory. Albanese has spoken in condemning Israel's war on Gaza and has called for legal accountability against over 60 companies supporting Israeli settlements, and has also condemned the military operations. The United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio condemned her efforts to prompt investigations at the International Criminal Court, labeling them illegitimate and shameful. Human rights experts worldwide have denounced these sanctions as an attack on accountability, freedom of speech, and justice. Katz has even hinted at a future immigration plan aiming to expel Gazans, a thinly veiled reference to ethnic cleansing, which international law strictly forbids. While the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu claims that any departure would be voluntary, the scale of destruction in Gaza, with 90% of the homes damaged or destroyed, health systems collapsed, and constant violence renders any choice meaningless. The world must reject Israel's forced displacement and ethnic cleansing plans and support the Palestinian people in the struggle for justice, freedom, and dignity. What Israel has been doing in the last few years, and if we talk about the history of 7 decades and what they have actually done after the 7th of October 2023, this is actually a slap on the face of the world, that they have actually crossed every red line without any threat of accountability. And this actually paints a very sorry picture, because it shows that the world, especially the Western world, that claims to be the flag bearer of human rights, freedom of speech, justice, and freedom, has actually acted in aid to Israel's plan of ethnic cleansing the people of Palestine, and even the entire world, especially the Western world, is complicit. So it is imperative that the world actually stops Israel from continuing to actually carry on its merry way. Now let's talk about another war that is not stopping at all, and let's talk about what is happening in Ukraine, because the war in Ukraine has intensified as Donald Trump's frustration with Vladimir Putin is also growing. And let's also take a close look at the evolving and complex dynamics between the United States President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin amid the ongoing war in Ukraine. Recently, Donald Trump openly expressed his frustration with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying that we get a lot of BS thrown at us by Putin. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless. These harsh words came just a day before Russia launched its largest ever drone attack on Ukraine last week, sending around about 728 drones and 13 missiles, striking multiple cities. The Ukrainian President Zelensky called it a telling attack, clearly timed to undermine peace efforts. Yet the link between Donald Trump's rhetoric and Putin's military actions is not straightforward. Russia also escalated attacks during periods when Donald Trump was silent or even positive about Putin, reflecting Russia's own strategic objectives rather than direct responses to the United States comments. 5 months ago, Donald Trump had a very different tone, claiming that he trusted Putin and believed that he wanted peace in Ukraine. But now Trump's stance has shifted. He has reversed a pause on weapon shipments to Ukraine and has praised the Ukrainian fighters, the same Ukraine who he had actually, left the Ukrainian president red-faced when he came to the White House. And now he's actually praising the courage of the Ukrainians, and this is signaling a more nuanced approach. Still, Donald Trump has yet to fully commit to tougher sanctions against Russia, despite bipartisan Senate support. His frustration may be genuine, but it's unclear if it will translate into decisive action. Meanwhile, Putin's Russia continues its brutal campaign, launching record drone strikes and slowly seizing more Ukrainian territory. Negotiations remain stalled, with Moscow waiting for Ukraine to propose dates for talks. The French President Emmanuel Macron has vowed that Europe will never abandon Ukraine, reinforcing support alongside the United Kingdom and others. Donald Trump's public break with Putin may be a turning point, one long overdue, reflecting the harsh reality reality that Putin might be unpersuadable and the war grinds on with devastating human cost. The US-Russia relationship is volatile and unpredictable, but recent shifts suggest growing US impatience with Russia. Will this impatience result in a surge in the United States support for Ukraine and harsher sanctions on Russia? Remains to be seen. Some say that Donald Trump's new tough language could also be an attempt to put pressure on the Russian leader amid the new Russian offensive into Ukraine. This war has been going into its third year now, and it has actually caused massive life losses. Millions of people have lost their lives on both sides of the border. It has completely hampered the global economy, especially the energy front. One of the reasons why the global economy is grim is because one of the major reasons is basically the conflict, which is now going into a way where it's going to be unending. The world really needs to put its act together, really needs to rein in both the sides, whether it's Ukraine or Russia, and needs to put an end to this crisis, because when it is always said that a war is started by human beings, but when it gets too nasty, like how the Ukraine and Russian war has become, it gets impossible for the humans to actually stop this, and the world is now afraid. In today's show, we have discussed in detail what the ravaging impact of climate change. It is imperative that the world really gets its act together, and as we said earlier, that we are headed in a direction where the world will lose to climate change in such a way that the history has never seen. And this is an Achilles heel of the world that can actually cause more devastation than any plague, than any flooding, or even any pandemic like the COVID-19 has caused. Climate change yearly is causing deaths that not even COVID has caused, the respiratory problems it has yielded. And it is very unfair that countries like Pakistan, who have not even contributed to 1% of the world's carbon emissions, are amongst the top 10 countries to actually suffer from the ravaging impact and the damages of climate change. The world needs to do measures such as climate financing to countries like Pakistan, and also work in coordination to actually stop this problem, because climate change is not an isolated problem. It is a transferable problem, and it is actually transferring, and it is actually taking the world into its domain at a very fast pace. So any solution against climate change will be a coordinated effort and not an isolated one. So the world really needs to take its act together. And we also discussed about Israel's new plan of ethnic cleansing the people of Gaza. This needs to stop. Israel needs to be held accountable. And in the end, obviously, we talked about how dangerous this Russian and Ukraine war is getting. The world is in the middle of crises such as wars, economic problems, climate change problems, and these can only be solved if the entire world there's a coordinated effort against them. So we will continue to discuss all these problems, but our show has come to an end. We will meet you in another show. So till then, take a lot of care of yourself, and please do share your feedback on both social media networks. This is me, Moiz Rahman, signing off. Thank you, and Allah Hafiz.